Okay, hello everybody. Thanks for hanging in there for just a second. It's the Rhetoric. It's also AKA Rich. Hope everybody's doing well, and thanks for all the follows so far. So yeah, shout outs to Sunskull Dream, Mez09, and Chrysalia. Hello, Games. Jim, thanks so much. So a big shout out to Games as well for inviting me to do this. I was very honored to get that invite. Looks like I'm a little the chat's a little dark on my screen, but that's okay. We will get there. Thanks, Tara Faye Bell, for the follow as well. Welcome everybody. Yeah, and gamers had reached out to me on a recent Twitch stream that I was doing. Hey Brian, thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. And yeah, had reached out and said, "Hey, I think this would be a cool thing. I'd love to get you participating in." And it was, I think, like last week or so. And so yeah, came together pretty quickly. And again, just really grateful. I remember seeing this last year. I think it was last year, right? That's when it happened. One of the first times, or maybe it's been going on for a bit. I'm not quite. Not quite sure, but yeah, I'm pretty new to the Twitch sort of space. Been doing a lot of this kind of stuff, I guess, for the last year and a half, streaming my book and things like that. So I'm really excited about that sort of stuff and just getting used to the whole world of, what it's like to be out there. Yeah, last year was the first one. Okay, yeah, thanks so much, and thanks to Dizzlecat too for the follow. Appreciate you. And what an innovative idea too, that you have moderations going on, you have panels. I mean, let's just get innovative with the means that we're on, right? Let's see what we can do out there in the world, in kind of shared space, the platform that we're in. I usually go to academic conferences and so forth. And they're in person and sometimes they're just on Zoom the whole time, but this is such a creative way of doing it. So thanks again for the invite. Okay, so I will turn to, and also, yeah, thanks to Games for announcing it on Twitter. I appreciate that. Okay. So my talk today, and that's looking a little funky. I'm trying to adjust the transcript real quick. Give me one moment just to fix this. There is a little bit of stuff going on. Nope, we don't want that. I wanted to make sure that this would follow the transcript that I've got through otter.ai because I have that service that I use for my own work. So this might look a little funky for just a second. Just give me one moment. I've got one eyeball on Brian's story too. Yeah. That's what's a great part about writing projects. It's about like the what if. What if we just did this? What if we tried something like something different, right? Something that was unlike, a traditional conference, which can be really hard to get to now more than ever. Okay. That should look good. Might be a tiny bit small in the sort of post part, but I think we'll be okay. I think we'll be good. Okay, so yeah, hey, let's have a writing conference and shoot the S. Yeah, it's kind of amazing how that works. Like, yeah, I'm with you. I've been super impressed. And yeah, thanks for being awake for it. I appreciate that. And I'm awake myself. It's Eastern time. This is about the time when I have my best brain, when I do my best thinking. So yeah, I'm happy to be here with you all. Okay, so been checking out lots of wonderful talks too, and I'm looking forward to looking at more of them, checking out more of them in on demand and so forth. So this will be on demand as far as I understand. So I'll be sure to share that with the organizers later on. So let's dive into our topic for the day. Hey, Swiftness, how's it going? Good to see you. Good to talk to you again. Yeah. So topic for the day is valuing slow writing. And this is sort of what I talked about in the abstract. I want to sort of repeat parts of that. A lot of writing, and really digital writing, which most of our work is now, right, is composed and distributed at these kind of rapid paces, almost in unbelievable ways, right? We go to Twitter, we go other places, we just see speed, speed, speed. That's what we encourage when we write. You go to a top Twitch page and you just see streams of chat. That's it. How do you keep up with that? Things of that sort. We're expected to compose rapidly too, and in micro ways, so 280 characters we often want to work in. 1 minute videos, we have limitations like that. Quick, digestible content. Images with captions and links in profile bios. News updates on your mobile app. So I have CBC. I'm based in Toronto. More blog posts than you can count. Keep up with across the world. The speed of digital writing has been in high gear for quite some time now. And I would even say that one thing I've noticed, and rightfully so, I really think this is a cool thing I see out there in the world, is my captions aren't keeping up. I apologize. Is writing sprints and so forth, right? It's kind of a genre expectation of being on Twitch. We set our timers. We work rapidly to meet those word counts and so forth. I'm meeting people on here all the time who say I'm doing 100,000 words in a month, right? And I'm just amazed by that. I don't think it's a bad idea. I just know I can't do that at all. Like, I have no way of composing that quickly. And so, yeah, NaNoWriMo, right? We do those sort of things. We try to write an entire novel or novella in a month. So it demands speed, even speedy revising and so forth. But the main thing that we're sort of encouraging is speed. Have you ever used the game or the application Flow State, for example, or the Most Dangerous Writing Game? There's so many out there that force you to continue writing, to stay on top of it, second by second, to compose things, and they punish you if you don't write, if you stop and you think a bit more. So as I sort of started seeing all those, I got really interested in this topic of slow writing. What does it mean to just slow down? What's the value of slowing down, of slow writing? What about a both-and approach, using speed in more than one way? And in fact, like, I will say, I don't know of an application out there that actually forces you to slow down. Things like Flow State, Write or Die, the Most Dangerous Writing app, and so forth. Again, they all punish you if you don't write, if you don't stay on the clock. They don't reward you for staring at the screen. I like those apps. Sometimes when I just need to get words down on the page, I will, work with it for a bit and then go back and slowly revise it. But ones that say you can only type this many words per minute, right? Oh, like, you're limited. I don't know about that. I might explore that here on the stream for a little bit when we have some time for questions and so forth. We'll see how that goes. Okay. I got this idea for the stream and the talk from a few scholars who've written about slow writing, and I didn't properly introduce myself, I should say, too. I am a professor of writing. I'm at York University in Toronto, Canada, and that's my day job. And yeah, I talk about this and teach this stuff every day, and it's mainly professional writing. That's where my discipline is from, in the writing department. And so a lot of the stuff I do on my own streams is about like academic writing, because I'm working on a book in that way. And yeah, I mean, I've given a bunch of talks at the university and workshops, mainly with students, but I haven't talked to fellow writers. So this is a really nice opportunity as well. But anyways, I got this idea from the slow professor. It's challenging this culture of speed in the academy. And I think this has implications for my peers here on Twitch. It's by Maggie Berg and Barbara Siebert. I just want to read this line here. Slow professors advocate deliberation over acceleration. We need time to think, and so do our students. Time for reflection and open-ended inquiry is not a luxury, but is crucial to what we do. And I agree with you. Kajitan writes, writing is a form of art, and art can't be forced or rushed. So we need to give ourselves, I mean, again, if we sort of swap out these words, right? We could say slow writers advocate deliberation over acceleration. They need time to think. We as writers need time to think. And so do our peers, our collaborators. We need time to reflect on what we're doing. And open inquiries is not a luxury, but it's crucial to what we do. So again, it's not saying I have time to do this stuff. You're saying, check the music there real quick, that we bake it into our own processes. That's what I'm sort of gleaning from this. So very interesting. And before that book came out, my former doctoral professor, doctoral mentor, and writing mentor, Laura Mitschke, had this to say about what she calls slow agency. And this is what she wrote about. It's a very lovely piece. You can find it for free on the web. It was made open access for the purpose of actually encouraging more people to engage with it. And so this is what she sort of discusses. Slow agency, it's derived from the idea of hypermiling among drivers. And in this article, she's referring to working as a writing program administrator. But I think we can import her ideas into planning and writing essays, maybe even writing novels, right? I haven't written a novel, but I know a lot of you out there have, and are working on some currently. So as she says here, how would I get everything done if I spent more time getting places? It was nearly impossible to imagine a different daily pace when I ticked off the many responsibilities competing for my attention and energy. Despite my initial apprehensions, I have come to appreciate the way hypermiling calls serious attention to the arts of productive stillness, resource preservation, and slowness, what hypermilers call gradual arrival. So when she discusses resource preservation, she's talking about our own resources, our bodies and energies that we commit to these writing processes. Now, if you do writing sprints, if you participate in daily challenges and so forth, I think I saw that the lady writes, I think, right? You have someone has like write a short story a day, something like that. Very impressive, awesome stuff out there. To you, this idea of slowing down might seem like an absurd thought. Anyway, you want me to slow my? How do we reframe like sprints, for example? And I think that for students that I've talked with, the idea of telling them to slow down and to say, let's just stay with this idea for a little longer. It also might seem absurd because they have so many things that they're trying to get done in 12 weeks. That's how long our terms are. It's very short. But what I take from Mitschke's article is that stretching out larger projects is crucial for self-care and gradual arrival to the completion of a task or a writing milestone. So checking some of the chat here. Brian saying getting a little exhausted. Yeah, good questions there from Games as well. So yeah, I think it's just about that kind of burnout, right? I think what we're kind of getting at is, and I think Mitchie's getting at it here too. And I hope that's okay, by the way, organizers, if I kind of chat along while giving this talk. But I like to think of this like a conversation a lot of times. Yeah, I mean, again, that resource preservation can be crucial so that we don't burn out really quickly working through all of this text and then having to spend a lot of time catching up with what we produced. If we're moving from meeting to meeting or task to task and not slowing down, we might run the risk of burning out. That's another thing I kind of glean from it. Superstar professor, yeah. You flatter me. I appreciate that. So how do we do that kind of stretching, which is stretching out like a project, right? Slowly getting through it. And I think, as Brian said, how do we do this without getting exhausted? I think one way to frame slow writing is through project management. Do you parse out parts of a writing project, for example? For example, when giving a writing assignment or given one, or you've assigned one to yourself or to like a collaborator, or you're starting a new project, do you work on the introduction one day and the conclusion on another? Do you work on one scene a day, for example? Do you allot a certain amount of hours per day on a project, or just the project in general? And again, the kind of what I'm thinking about is I'm going to show you my writing project calendar. And then I'm going to invite you, just for, because again, I like these talks to be a bit interactive, is write with me for about 10 minutes to plan out a project that you're working on. I have to do the same. I'll show you an example of what I planned out, and then I'll show you how that sort of, made its way into a project. So I have a very simple way of doing this. I mean, I know some writers will use, Asana and other things like Trello. If you use those two, those are really great for mapping out a massive project, right? So for example, like I just worked on a piece with 2 collaborators, and it's a 7,000 word piece. It's pretty short, but we don't have deadline things due until the end of August, because we know that we're going to have to do this slowly. Things like summer plans are coming up. My son is just about to go on into summer break, so my time is going to be very limited. I have to slow down, or I'm going to get upset. And if I don't accept that, I think if I don't accept that, I think I run the risk of getting upset, and that's no fun, right? When you don't plan it out. So let's look at this. I'll show you like what my project list looks like. Author Goddess, thanks for the follow, and also thanks for the organization. Help me organize the panel and things like that. Give me all the details. Really appreciate you putting everything in on the website as well. So this is what my timeline looks like. I will show you. It's a little. I think it's okay there. So this is kind of the list of things that I tend to do. I have like publication project title, due date, status, and then publication date, and whether it was single or collaborative. And this is just a very global way of looking at, like, okay, I know what's coming up. I know what I'm going to start doing at some point, but it just allows me to see the entire flow. And all of these have come together pretty slowly. Like this one, it's hard to see actually. Is there? Yep. This one that I wrote for one journal, it came together over 2 years. That's because it went through reviewers and so forth. And I just accepted that was part of the process. Is, again, maybe you've had this experience too. If you submit something to an editor, sometimes you have to wait 6 months for feedback. And at first I was just like, that's terrible. Like, that's too long. But having this kind of overview, if you will, was really great, because I could say, this is in the can, this is under review, so now I can move on to working on this piece, on Pain and Pleasure, for example. I have a piece I was actually writing about Twitch for another article recently, just about the process of it and what it might mean for scholars. This was due on the 17th, so along the way I was doing a couple things up here, like working on the rest of my book and so forth. So I think, just in a way, I think slowness is about long-term planning, right? And making sure that we know kind of what's coming up, we know what we can anticipate, and we're not surprised by deadlines. That certainly helps me not rush through the things that I'm trying to work on. If I just have a couple things in the can rotating, I'm usually feeling pretty good about this. But that's a big way. You know, maybe you do this sort of stuff. I'd love to hear what you planned use. Okay, so you're talking about Notion. Yeah, Notion's awesome too. I used that with my students a year and a half ago, actually, for our project management, and they were just it was really easy for them to follow. It's a clean interface, super nice. Yeah. Okay, so the one that I kind of encourage you to work on is this for about 10 minutes. We'll do this together, and I'll probably just shut my mic off for a minute and find some timer to set in the corner. I mean, this is very simple. I do it this way. For projects themselves, I'll do a writing project task. I'll make a small table, just, you know, sort of a 3x2, if you will. And you can even do this in Word or anything like that. Writing project task, date of work or hours, and then the deadline. So if I'm planning that out, I'm planning out my trip, right, for writers, my writing trip, so to say. If I'm practicing hypermiling, you know, I'm going to segment this out pretty strategically. And so this is a virtual reality project that my peer and I were working on. We were kind of drafting different parts of the piece, and notice that we didn't really get very far in the planning. We just were like, let's finish the lit review, and that's about it. And this is an example, and I will admit it has gone even it's been even slower than I imagined, and that's fine, actually. But we said the ultimate deadline was June 1 to get some of this stuff done. So what are the things you're working on? Yeah, and as Gamers GM was saying, feel free to ask any question as well. So yeah, let me do this for just a second. I'm going to unmerge these cells so we can see what the things are. We'll just say submission deadline. I'm going to call it that, submission deadline. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to take all this out because I'm going to retool this, and I'm going to say the next project I'm working on is about what's the one that's coming up? We will use the one that I mentioned. I did say August 15th, but it's actually August 1st. So what I need to do is narrative on okay. So I love collaborating with different folks. And one of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm mainly concerned with like sort of emotion in the body and things like that. And yes, pleasantly flying over, by the way. Welcome. Yeah. And I love these metaphors too about, dragons and sphinxes and things like that. It's super cool. So this is what I'm doing. I've got to think of this, like I have roughly a month to get my parts in for the 7,000 word narrative on writing technologies and data centers. That's something like a couple of collaborators and I are doing. And you know, I have to like force myself to stop what I'm doing on these other projects and maybe just plan out these next tasks. So what is it that I have to do? I'm going to work through that for a few minutes. I'll keep my mic on. I'll kind of chat. But for about 10 minutes or so, that's what we'll do. We'll look to do something like this, to do some planning of our own. I'm going to actually grab a timer here. Let me see. I'll do this I'll add another source. Let me just find that countdown. There we go. Perfect. Love doing things on the fly. It is one of the fun things to do as a professor and as a streamer. Okay, 10 minutes. I'm going to work on my own project planning as well. Trying to think about breaking down the tasks slowly. If you're doing the same, what kind of ways would you break down your tasks for that gradual arrival of August 1st? yeah. So it's sort of like 10 minutes of planning, right? And I think it's just for the purposes of the panel and the talk. If I did do it in, let's say, non-streaming time, I'd probably spend an hour or more on it. Yeah. Yeah, planning all the details. So what is it that I need to do between now and August 1st? So I think what I need to do is do so this is part of a collaborative piece. So there's going to be a couple moving parts involved, right? Well, first I need to write my section. So we'll say that. So we will I will say draft section on Toronto data. Nope, can't spell that. Toronto data centers. So as I do this, I'm realizing there are a couple moving parts. In fact, I don't know if anybody else is in Canada presently for the stream, but one of the largest data centers in Canada is actually in the Toronto area. And if you drive up to it, it says this way to the heart of the cloud, meaning like the internet basically, and all the data that passes through it. And so I need to go back and do that. I did that one time. It was only like a 20-minute bike ride for me. And I think just baking that part into research is going to be huge. Now this is like a compressed way of thinking about this. I would do this over multiple days, most likely for the parts I'm breaking out. But tech and data. So reading, doing some research. I think what I'll do is break this out even more. I'm a slow reader too. I have to actually have to finish every book I read. I can't just move on. It's a really, I don't know what the word is. I can't put a word on it right now, but so a couple things I'm thinking about. I'm going to read some narratives on this. I'm going to also read previous literature, scholarship on data centers. And then I think at that point, I'll be ready to do some drafting. So let me break these down real quick. Date of work, we'll just say, I'm probably not going to do anything until after July 1st. So I need to be realistic with that. Am I just giving myself a couple days to look at it, I think, to anticipate what I'm going to be doing? Probably, we'll just say, those are my big days. July 5th, that's when we'll start. And that's a nice thing too, as I'm thinking kind of creatively about this. I think I could do this on a weekend too. Because, I'm going to ride my bike anyways. I'm going to take care of myself by getting out there. So if I do this at least that day, I think I'll be good. And then July 5th, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do some reading. And let's see, that's actually a day. And here's what I'm kind of coming up against is my son's childcare, or my son's school ends next week, as I was saying. So my days of writing have kind of will be productively limited, I would say, to Mondays and Tuesdays. So I'm already looking at this like July 6th. I'm taking care of, I'm having a good time with my son. That's when I'm doing thinking about these projects when I step away from them. I'm writing parts of it in my head. I'm just not at the desk, right? So July 7th, I can read some scholarship. After morning kind of reading, something like that. And then what I might do, just for slowness purposes, is just redo this again. And I heard a bell notification. Let me look back at that. Daisy M. Black, thanks for the follow. Hope you're doing well. We're talking about slow writing. So if I rinse and repeat this process, like maybe I need to go back again and look at that data center. Maybe I reach out to the people for a tour. So already 2 weeks have passed, right? And now I have 2 full weeks maybe to start drafting this. And that's a pretty slow process. Or what am I saying? This is 2 weeks is a short amount of time. But how would I start sort of breaking that out from there? So I need to do, let's say, 14th I'm looking at on my cow. The 5th, let's see, 5th. I could probably do some drafting on the 5th. Yep. So this one, I would say, I want to get like 500 words down in one day. Maybe even fewer, 250, right? What if I just said that? 250 words. That's a paragraph. And then I do it again. I say, all right, that's a Friday. I've got some time to think about it. I go to the 18th. And that time, I've coasted into this idea. I set this to the 19th, and I go draft another section. So maybe I've picked up some momentum. But I give myself a range. I say 250 to 500 words. I've mentioned this several times on my stream, is that if I set a low word count, if I say, I'm going to kind of just jog through some of this stuff today, I often produce more because I haven't started by saying, I got to sprint, I got to go, I got to get all this stuff done. And I don't remember my word count right now that I have to meet for this collaborative piece, but I know that's like my section that I'm working on is going to be probably like 2,000 to 3,000 words. So now I'm looking at this, I'm like, wow, that's manageable. I could start just adding more and more days. And even if like the 20th, for example, that's usually when I'm like taking care of my son. I'm, 2 to 3 days a week. This suddenly seems like a very achievable thing. Like maybe while he's eating lunch, I could jot down some words, right? If I only say 50 words, what happens there? Lots of different things to think about for this. But yeah, but what do you make of that? Let's see, let's go back to this interesting panel to go to, considering 31 seconds and 31 days. I'm not sure what that is. Officer Genius. Not rude. Not a rude thing to ask. Are you asking about me? Yeah, it's my channel. Yeah. Welcome. Yeah, very much welcome. Yeah, just another writer guy. the writer guy, I'm the professor, stuff like that. And again, I think that's what you've all, a lot of folks here in the Twitch space have taught me is like you're doing all this amazing creative work, and I keep thinking to myself like, oh man, I could learn so much from like what you all do, and what you practice and you encourage and so forth. But yeah, I'll turn it to you all too. What do you make of this idea of just, do you do you think you could see yourself doing, or do you do things like, I'm only doing 50 words today? Or is it just a means of disappointment? Like, I talked to several of my peers, and like they are doing 500 words every 3 days, right? Like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's a good system that works for them. Um, no issues there. But they get disappointed, and I've caught myself getting disappointed that way when I don't meet my targets. And if it's 250 words and I don't even meet that, I'm like, oh, that's terrible. Tell us about me. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I teach, and this is also why I think this is like hitting a lot home for me a lot. This topic is I teach digital media writing and authorship, and so the students who come into my classes are English and professional writing majors. So they're often like mixing creative writing with technical writing, um, and what we're talking about is a lot of social media writing and ways of publishing for uptake and publishing for like virality, as we'll say, or velocity. So different sort of speeds and things like that, so that third parties will pick up and retweet what you're doing in massive and sort of, let's say, speedy kind of ways. So I think that when I sort of talk about this stuff with them, we kind of have to think about social media too as another space to practice slow writing, which again seems like a little counterintuitive to what the demands are for social media. Yeah, so mainly I teach professional writing in the sense of writing for businesses and content creation for businesses and stuff like that. So it's a good question. Yeah, that's a great point, Tara. Just breaking it down, is one way of just saying like you've got multiple things you need to do, and those deadlines aren't going to sneak up on you, right? As you can see them on the page, and then you can say like, how am I going to allocate my time for each of these tasks, and what's reasonable for me um, each day, right? So every time I do this, I say, oh, I know what the barriers are going to be for this particular day, like, or what's the life forces, right, and things that I have to enjoy. I give myself permission to accept, and that is going to figure into how I plan this sort of stuff. There's also a dual thing you can think about, like some people say like life gets in the way of writing projects. Like, I like to say like sometimes writing gets in the way of life projects, or things like that. I very much value that self-care and preservation as much as possible. Like I usually don't work on the weekends. And I will say as a professor and somebody who does this professionally and full time, like I have that privilege to do that. Like, and so I fully acknowledge that. There's various reasons why I have that. But I still think the principle of breaking things down and approaching them in a slow way to that gradual arrival of a project can be very valuable. And what I encourage us to think about, and I'm going to turn to something else in just a minute, is if you didn't have a month like me here, sort of working on an August 1 deadline, if you planned something out the entire summer, what would it look like? And let's say it was like a short story or 7,000 words. If I plan that out the entire summer, like it just seems so much more achievable. Yeah, no problem, officer. No problem at all. Um, and just to kind of add a little bit more relation here, I was just reminded about something that I think I've given this talk like in a similar talk like in classrooms, but I didn't pull this up for you all. I think this would be kind of interesting to talk about. Um, so I used to write for Writers Digest, and this was published 10 years ago. Oh my god. When I think about that, I'm just like amazed that that's how much time has flown by. Even if I'm like an advocate of slow writing, like time, it's a thing. We get wrapped up in our projects. So I interviewed George R. R. Martin. Um, and if we're talking about slow writing, I know that this has been a conversation that he has had and has been the subject of many conversations about approaching things slowly. So you might have different, have feelings about this. Yeah, I interviewed him for the piece. Very funny story, I can just say, retrospectively, now that it's been like 10 years, is that I met him at Comic-Con International in 2012. Yeah. And we were kind of like, we met at this author kind of event sort of thing that his publisher had put on, and like a bunch of people were there. And I just said, is there any way I can kind of interview you? Like, I'd love to speak with you. And he's like, maybe in September. And I was just like, no, like the deadline was like coming up. I mean, my editors had been pushing it back. And so there was this kind of question of like timeliness and deadlines kind of coming up. But eventually he was into it. It was just like he wanted to be out of that space because there was just a lot he had to do. And we ended up doing a phone interview. But one thing I want to highlight is, definitely like feel free to check it out. I think you can find it. A couple people have it somewhere linked on the web now. I'll just say, I know it's also available on their own website. But there's a part that I need to find real quick. I used to pull up for students. I'm sorry, I'm not a little bit more prepared for this part, but it was a publishing. Okay. Yeah, it's right here. All right, I'll just read this part here. Right, it's a little small, so let me zoom in just a wee bit so you can see it. What else is hard? The words are hard. You get the visions in your head and what the scene is going to be. You have a big battle scene, let's say, or a feast and a lovemaking scene. It doesn't matter what the scene is. You can see it and you can hear it, but you're still staring at a blank screen. That's the nuts and bolts of writing. It's great to see the cathedral, but you still have to build it one stone at a time. A tremendous amount of effort goes into finding the right words. Ooh, nice. I will check that out. Yeah, I think pace, probably is a bit harder. I mean, I think that for me, like, I've never published a book, so I'm finding like right now I'm in the mire of getting through parts of it. Like, I don't know those moves that I need to, like, I don't know how my body feels as it goes through like these end processes. So next time I can go, okay, like I've accepted that I'm going to be doing this a little slowly. But I think like at some point we all get a little gummed up in one of our scenes. They go, okay, I just need to take a break. I need to just like slow down, think about what I'm trying to do, and then come back to it with fresh eyes. There's another part in here that he mentions about paragraph writing, and it is right about here. Let me just say, okay, yep. This is what I talked about sentence crafting, and I think I asked him about just the really nice way he writes. I said, "Your prose is often praised for being so vivid and for its flow. Can you describe how you craft a sentence? In my first drafts, I tend to be wordy, and then in my final drafts, I tend to be cutting things. I probably overdescribe. All right." John got up from the chair and walked across the room and pulled up the Venetia blinds, then lowered the window, latched it, and returned to his chair. Then I changed it to John got up and closed the window. So he even says at one point in here, like, I am lucky if I can write maybe 100 words a day. That is probably because he's doing a lot, or at the time he was doing a lot for the series. And there was just there's a lot of things to juggle. I think he says something about that later on. Yeah, I needed to pull that up. I apologize. It's not like totally relevant. I don't know who's like what overlords are like listening right now on the Twitch, but if you message me, I could probably get you a copy of this. I will just say. Yeah, so shuts off 750 words or so. Is it possible to break into the market being slow? I mean, I guess that's the thing too is, if it depends on what your deadlines are. So, if you're saying I'm doing 250 words a day for the next 6 months, something like that, 100 words a day. Or even for 2 months, I'm going to do 100 words a day and get like the first chapter done. I don't know. I mean, if it's a self-imposed deadline, something you want to reach out to agents, like maybe it's not a bad thing. But if you've got a deadline set by an agent or a publisher after submission, it might be you'd have some challenges. But I think if you like, one of the things too is, I think this is a really good point or thing I've been thinking about, is slow writing can be largely set by the writer, right? I set my own pace. I try to, but I know what deadlines have been assigned to me. And I think sometimes if somebody's asking for you to submit something to them, so it's a week or something like that, can you get this to me tomorrow? This write-up. I had somebody ask me in my department for some help writing an ad for a new hire, and they needed it like the next day. And I just know myself, I know my process. I can't produce something that quickly. I have to approach it slowly for various reasons. I need time to write it out. I need time to look at it and then rewrite it again, right? So I said, I can do this if we can extend it by a week. I'm happy to help you. I don't want to be unhelpful, but I also need to respect myself and my own processes. And I think sometimes you can encourage others to think about that slow writing if you tell them what your needs are, right? And so, yeah, if you don't have any deadlines, it could be a little challenge. I could sort of see, but I feel you too. That 750 words, like, yeah, your brain's off. That's a couple paragraphs you've written. That's the thing is, even if you don't time it, you do it by word count. Once you hit that, you can move on, right? And I think it's another thing about slow writing too, is just paying attention to your body. What's your body telling you after you start, once you get to that space? It doesn't even matter what time it is. What are you going to do once your body says, I'm done for the day? And more importantly, how long are you going to take a break before you go back to it, right? Okay, so I've got a couple more minutes to work through some of the stuff. So let me look back at my notes. There's a lot of resources out there. In addition to what I've described and what I've been running through is managing projects large and small. Let me just link some of them in the chat. This is the one I saw on Reddit about 6 months ago, and then I've used it. And then let me look at my updated version real quick. I had two that I updated to encourage slowness. yeah, here's an example of something I did for the book. This was in like March. No, listen. I am, yeah, Brian. It's a great. It's great. Like honestly, a lot of times my presentations are a little like interactive that way. So no problem at all. I think that the genre of Twitch and writing encourages us to chat while we go. So there's National Novel Writing Month. I mean, these sort of things I know have been linked out, but what I did in this is I just adapted it to, my own tasks. So instead of mapping this as like a word count, I've eliminated a bunch of different things. Let me just refresh this because it's a little. But this is how I planned out, parts of chapter 4 when I was first drafting it. So I would say like, okay, I've got 31 days here. I'm only going to do maximum, 750 words, for example. And I think just like kind of seeing how the pace picks up and slows down is another way of seeing what you're writing and your momentum does. You're going to have times where you really you have a large hill to climb, so to say, like for parts of the scene. And other times you're just doing revising. So you're not really changing many words. You're adding a couple sentences here and there. I mean, and just for like the sake of the example, like let's just say, okay, I'm gonna kick it into high gear for this is February. I may have said like, we'll say 250 words a day. And if I just copy all those, let's say the first part of the month, like, yeah, I got to move kind of quickly. Like that's not even that fast. And then the last bit, here, let me change it to like look a little more. I mean, that could be an interesting resource is to say, how do you visualize the pace that you're setting for yourself? So let's say 1,000 words. This is what I was doing with, I've done this with students too. We'll look at like project management as visualization. So we do that, and then we say, okay, but for this last part, I'm going to go in low gear. So I'm only going to do, like, I'm really going to slow down, and that's going to seem totally different as we go through. I can still arrive at 16,000 words. So, I mean, I'm convinced that some of you probably use this already. I mean, this is the gold tracker that I've even got from NaNoWriMo. And then what I like about this one is you've got daily goals here. So I'm looking at like the entire month of November, like I could just take this and change it totally to my own essay or a section and say, oh, I've got to do 50 words today. That's it. What's the value of doing that? Right? I keep asking myself. And I think it's good. It's encouraging you to think carefully about each line. Yeah. So that's also very interesting too, Brian. Like you could say, and I was sort of mentioning this. I guess I was getting at that. Is Monday and Tuesday. Lathan, thanks so much for the follow. Appreciate you. Is I can produce a lot more words. I know myself well enough now, like because I'm gonna have a full day to work on Mondays and Tuesdays and every other Friday, for example. So those days, I can already say like I can anticipate having a big goal of 500 words, something like that. But the other days, I could just say, if I'm lucky, I'm going to get this much done. And it's just setting the bar low is good for me, like as a means to not being disappointed. And I think just acknowledging slowness is a way of not disappointing yourself. Because every day you don't meet those 1K words, it's just gonna accumulate, Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So let me go back to my notes. Gotta hide the script, So professors do. We act like we're pretty organized sometimes, but we also like to have a little plan. And I think back to your point, Brian, like if we're just working through the script and doing things like this, we're not encouraging slowness. So I'm just like in low gear, getting to the eventual points of the talk, anyways. Okay. So I think we have some time for questions here in just a minute, because if I believe we need to transition time about 10:45, right? Mods, something like that. I can't remember. I'm sorry, but I want to round out some of this talk with a couple things, and I'll think about more tools too. There's one I had in mind, but I want to make one more point here. Again, working back from some of the scholars I really admire and writers who think about this stuff. Another scholar who's really inspired this talk, it's Jonathan L. Bradshaw, also a really good friend of mine in the fields. He has a piece called Slow Circulation, the Ethics of Speed and Rhetorical Persistence. So, in writing studies and rhetoric studies, which I'm also affiliated with, that's what I did my PhD in, for example, we talk a lot about circulation as a way of building social change or advocating for issues and so forth. And again, it's usually dependent on speed, right? And so he's offering a counterpoint to say, like, what about public advocacy and writing that is strategically composed in very slow yet productive ways? And so this is what he has to say, and I'll just because I know it's on the screen, I'll go ahead and read it for accessibility purposes. Major social changes are rarely sudden, and the slowness in circulation here accounts slow circulation, here accounts for the rate of rhetorical effect. To put it bluntly, many of the speedy viral circulation models with which we are so comfortable as frames for digital media are unfit for the types of rhetorical work some small-scale regional community advocacy groups aim to do. By slow, I mean the ways that rhetorical positions slowly, persistently circulate through public deliberation, text, and other media productions until they accumulate a cultural ethos that can begin to affect wider change and deeper impact. Talk about a really nice sentence there, right? We have to kind of work our way through slowly. For public advocacy context in particular, slow circulation as a desired end can better keep lines of communication active by strategizing for persistence rather than, or sometimes in addition to, speed and reach. The article, of course, it goes into great detail about that definition and gets into case studies of media producers in the Appalachian region of the United States. And so in addition to framing or affirming that creating a timeline for a project might allow us to focus more deeply on parts of a project, this article, it reminded me of something simple we might try if working in social media. That's scheduling, posts, for example. Even if you write five blog posts or tweets in one day, do you have to send them all at once? What might happen if you say post once a day at a particular time? I'm thinking about TweetDeck. I'm not sure if the mods use this for the actual conference, but the fact that you can time them and schedule them, I kind of think about like this being a potential model for other writing projects. So as you can do here, it's not coming up on the screen just yet, but in TweetDeck, you can write your post and then you can schedule the tweet as you go. Is that something like a lot of you do when you're releasing content, right? Are you scheduling it to the post to come out at a particular time or at a particular day? Or do we release it when it's, when it's published? Like publishers will set that with you, say it's going to come out on this date, get ready for it, start building the hype for it, right? But something like this, if I just scheduled my work a bit more, I wonder what would happen. And Twitter is a good way of doing that. I think just because they allow you to sort of make the posts, but I also think too, like this might apply for the kind of intro writing we do, with teams and so forth. We might say like, it's easy to send an email, for example, on a Saturday. Or something like that. What if you write it and then schedule it to be sent at 9 a.m. in the morning? Right? That query letter, you're following up with somebody about it. They're not going to read it on the weekend. If you know the editor in some way, like they might, but there could be like a real impact of encouraging this slow circulation and delivery by sending it at 10 a.m. on Monday, something like that. And so you have set the pace in your own way, in your own strategic way. And I think that's what he's getting at here is we need to be thinking about this slow circulation. Let me check the chat real quick. Oh yeah, it's TweetDeck. Let me post it in the chat here for you. Okay, on the hour. That's when we move to the next one. Okay, cool. Yeah, lots of calories for this. Yeah, always schedule. Okay, so lady, you do a bit of that on TweetDeck or email, something like that. I just find like you can step away from it too. I mean, there's a value like if you do this on your email, and I don't want to like spend a lot. I won't spend a lot of time showing you like how I do this sort of stuff, but like I know that in Outlook you can do things like that. And if you schedule it out like a message, a follow up with an editor, for example, especially if you're breaking into the market, you can schedule it for Monday and then come back and change it before it's sent. You have some time to think. That's another thing too, is the conversations I'm referencing here are just going back to that first point. We need time to think. And so if we project out when we're going to be changing things, we have a bit more time to work through it, and to come back to it. I mean, how many times do you see like this I'm totally guilty of this. I'll mention too is I would have to write a lot of blog posts for my former job as a reporter. And this was like a very long time ago before I went back to school. And it's just like so many errors were in there, right? Like they're just real bad. And I just kind of wish that the culture of slowness, were more of a thing. I think that it's easy to just dash off different stories, especially like news and reviews and things like that. But oftentimes I was noticing like these egregious errors. So yeah, Brian, I think it used to be, and then I think they were absorbed, as happens quite a bit in terms of TweetDeck and Twitter. But I could be wrong. I know it's been around for quite a bit, and it's changed some names, and there are other versions of it too that are pretty like Hootsuite, I think is one. Cool. Yeah. How did you manage deadlines as a reporter? These are good questions. Well, officer, I will admit I didn't manage them. That's why I left. I was there for a few years, and then I kind of went into the freelance writing mode because one, I went back to school, and two, I found it really difficult to keep up with, deadlines because I had not acknowledged or understood some of the things that make slow writing really valuable for me, and for sort of personal reasons too. But I think that yeah, I had so many like a lot of times like errors would come up and stuff like that. Like nothing like too like I would say like factual sort of things, but I mean, I was just always getting picked on for having like numerous errors. That's something like the sort of line errors, and yeah, it just got too much. Also, I'll just not to get like too bummed out for too much of a side story, but like the newspaper was changing very significantly after my first year or two, when I got promoted to working for a magazine inside. Unbelievable changes were sort of happening, and eventually I left. 6 months later, the entire staff was laid off. So I could see the writing on the wall, and I just sort of planned strategically. But after that, I freelanced, and that enabled me to set my own pace of what I was going to pitch. And then oftentimes I would work on a very like I would talk with my editors and work out like a pretty reasonable deadline. Usually, when you work in magazines, you have a pretty long deadline anyway, so that worked well for me as a freelance writer. But not so much on the weekly. It was very difficult. Yeah, I think that listen, that's what I'm hoping from this talk is that like whether we do it ourselves as slow writing, or we encourage others that we're working with, such as editors, to help us get there slowly by having like more reasonable deadlines, or communicating those deadlines and our needs, we can make better projects. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it's taken a long time. I missed so many deadlines when I first started working as a reporter and freelance writer. I'd stay up all night working on stuff just because I would kind of, my way of thinking through sentences and wanting to really tell a good story, especially if be writing the cover story, it would just haunt me all night. But I think on the one hand, it was my own process. On the other hand, it was just, the demands of the job, and that's where the tension came. So it was and it was dependent on speed. So okay, so that is all I have really for most of this talk. So I want to just close with one thing I was thinking about. Thanks to everybody for chatting and so forth. Mods, if there's something I should do to transition, like hosting or anything like that, please, or rating, please let me know where to go. But I'll just say a couple more words, and then we can kind of just chat for a bit longer as we wrap up. I've really enjoyed this kind of conversation and the points I've been making. But I mean, overall, just in summary, let me just cover these 3 things again. Slow Professor, check out that book if you're interested. There's a lot of different points I think all writers can pick up to thinking about this. Because as we're writing, we're also doing a lot of different things, non-writing, while we're working on writing projects, and I think we can all learn some stuff from that. Slow agency. So again, hypermiling and resource preservation. That's the second thing I would encourage us to think about. And then lastly, just slow movement and circulation. So how do we advocate for ourselves by encouraging strategizing, like persistence versus speed, right? Do any of you use Ulysses? What suggestions do you have for authors hoping to hone their craft? Yeah, I'm going to think on that for just a second. That's a good one, lady. I appreciate that. So Ulysses, it used to be a one-time service, and now it is subscription-based. I have not found, as I mentioned, any sort of applications and things like that force you to slow down, and any like actually force you to slow down. Like they don't let you type. There's on Twitter there's slow mode, right? You can do that. Like I can only type like every 5 seconds. That's the one I know of. But Ulysses, it's a writing program that you can write things in Markdown, which is a simplified sort of hyper markup language. So then, like instead of doing bold and so forth, you can do this kind of stuff. Again, like that's a whole nother talk. But one of the things I noticed is you could set here goals, and you can say at most. I need to move this over. I realize it's a little bit off the screen. Sorry about that. So if you set a goal, do at most 50 words. And that's what we said. We said 50 words. So what if you did something like this, that instead of saying like, I have to reach at maybe for honing your craft, I could sort of say to Lady's question, for honing your skill of approaching things slowly, instead of saying I have to meet this minimum goal, you can say I have to meet a maximum goal for the day of 100 words, because I want to look really closely at what I'm saying right here, right now. So yeah, if I just started writing and I go, okay, hey everyone, thanks for joining this stream. If you'd like to learn more about my processes and continue the conversation, feel free to join me during the week for my work on my book. I try to stream several days a week, Monday through Friday, mostly during the day. Okay, so I got 2 words. Thank you. We'll say that. Now, if I start to go over, and one more thing. And so you see how that turns red? Something about this is very interesting. Just like the color. It's like, oh, you've gone too far. This is all you can do. 50 words, maximum. Not minimum, but maximum. That's all you can do. I think there's something valuable from that. I would love to know how that affects you. I may even try it. You've given me my ideas for next week's stream, so thank you. All right. Just checking what to do. Suggestions. Let's see real quick. Yeah, what other questions do you all have? Got a little bit of time, I think. You type raid Writers CONduit. Okay, so that's what I'll do. Right, Brian? Is that what I should do? Raid Writers CONduit. Okay. Okay, great. Yep, got it. Thank you. Ulysses. Yeah, let me put a link in the chat, actually. So I think it is mostly iOS, like Mac based. That's where my head usually is. Google Docs used to 10 years ago forced me to slow down because it was too slow to keep up with when I was on a roll. Oh wow. Yeah. I mean, it does have those kind of read until you hit a goal. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I don't think that is. Let me check. That's very interesting. Let's see. If I go back, can I do that? Okay, so it doesn't frame it as red, but it does say, like, it does kind of encourage you. So yeah, it's like couched in the positive, I would say. But yeah, like maybe that's like an opportunity for a script. I think somebody should invent that. Like you do things, an app that does not allow you to type quickly. Yeah, like it stops you if you type, let's say, like for Swiftness, who, yeah, is a very speedy writer. I've noticed on your stream, you are so much faster than me, and I love it. Like, what if you could? It would say, yeah, you can only do 100 words per 30 minutes, and it would not let you type on the screen if you exceeded that at all. Yeah, it's really cool too. I like this visualization. I just for larger projects, I haven't had much success with it, but when I'm writing like slides, I definitely use it. And what's really cool about this is you can set the reading aloud time. So if you know you're going to you've put in like 2,000 words, like oftentimes my scripts, this is like I said I wanted to do at least 15 minutes, but I can also set it to maximum amount of time. Oh, is that right? Oh, for the words does it too. Okay, I thought that maybe it was about slowness. Yeah, I have not checked out For the Words yet, but I know that Coffee Quills his. I remember they were telling me about it when we first met on Twitch. So, and that's another thing too you could think about is, and I'll transition here in just a second. What tools are going to, do you give yourself time to play around with these tools? And so I need to, in terms of slowness, like maybe one thing I need to do for my book is like try For the Words and see how it fits. But I have to bake that time in, time to play, time to experiment. You know what? That has gone away. Sorry about that with the transcript there. Awesome. Okay, folks. I think that's going to do it for me. So I will start to transition now and just say my thanks and so forth. Swiftness is saying, I just realized how you can get Scrivener to do something like this. Yeah, setting the word count and target goals. That's what I do. Super helpful. Very, very helpful. Yeah. Yeah, so thanks everyone again for the chat. And I will be doing this for the rest of the summer, a couple days a week, as I was sort of saying on the stream. So feel free to follow along, co-work. And that's a big thing too, as well, is the kind of working and writing we do together. That's writing can be a very lonely process, and I think that we need to be together. And this convention is a really good opportunity to network with all of you and get to know more about your processes. But let's continue these conversations for sure. Okay, so I'll go ahead and set the raid, and yeah, we'll talk to you next time. All right, let's see what this does. Okay, 8 seconds. Okay, bye everybody. Thank you. Bye, Swift.